And is the audio coming through from me okay, Rami?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, great.
أنا لا تمام ما في مشكلة. وأنا وصيته قلت له
Okay, great, guys. Welcome and thank you for joining the Syria campaign broadcast with Rami, who's live in Aleppo right now. Thank you for taking the time out of your morning, your afternoon, your evening. I know we've got people on the line from Chile, from the United Kingdom, from Romania, Switzerland, Canada, Ireland, the US, and more. So it's fantastic to have such a global audience for what Rami's going to tell us. By way of introduction, my name is Anna Nolan. I'm the project director here at the Syria campaign. And for those of you who don't know our work, the Syria campaign is a small group of human rights activists that came together to form a kind of advocacy group that tries to mobilize people from around the world to act in solidarity with Syrians in their struggle for peace and democracy inside Syria. And in that work, we've worked in partnership with the volunteer rescue workers, the White Helmets, with Syrian activists, with Syrian medical workers. And the one message we hear from them all, time and time again, is that what Syrians need and desperately, desperately want is protection. So a big focus of the work of the Syria campaign is what can we do and what can people around the world like you do to pressure our international governments to do more to protect Syrian civilians who are being attacked by the Assad regime, by the Russians, by the Iranians, by ISIS, and increasingly by the anti-ISIS coalition strikes. And we know that it's only when we see the prioritization of protection of civilians in Syria that we have any chance towards a genuine resolution of this conflict. And one of the big barriers to progress on this issue is that not enough people know what's really happening inside Syria and what Syrian civilians are facing every day. And the kind of, who's committing these human rights abuses, who's attacking civilians. And without knowing that, we can't take the action to stop it. So we're really excited today to have Rami give us a perspective on that from Aleppo. And how this is going to work. This is our first time doing something like this. We hope to do it more, so please bear with us. But if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a little live chat box. So if you have any questions to Rami, please ping them in that. And if you're on Twitter, you can use the hashtag Aleppo Live and we'll take some questions from there as well. And we just want to start by saying, a huge thank you to Rami for doing so much work to set this up at his end. He's gone to tremendous lengths to get the equipment, to get the lighting and everything. And it's just a testament to his commitment of getting a message about what's happening to Syria civilians to the international world. For those of you who aren't familiar with Rami, he's a leading Syrian activist and journalist. Rami is the son of two dissident Syrian poets. He grew up in the UK and he's reported in Syria since the beginning of the uprising. In the early days of the uprising, he became a really trusted voice for the international media at a time when the Assad regime was imposing a media blackout. That war caused his life to be threatened. And he relocated to Cairo, where he set up the Activist News Association and a press. If you guys don't follow them, you should. They do absolutely incredible work reporting on what's happening inside Syria. And Rami's been in and out of the country since 2011, getting that critical message of what's really happening to Syrian civilians into the international press. This broadcast is also being simultaneously broadcast by Rami across Aleppo and Idlib. And one of the reasons that he's doing that is a lot of people, he's told us, they all think that everyone in the West knows what's happening in Syria and they just don't care. And we hope that by broadcasting this, it shows that actually there's a lot of confusion for multiple reasons people have about what's happening in Syria. And your attendance on this call today is just proof that people do care and they do want to find out what's happening. And so Rami will at times do short little reports in Arabic for his radio so that the broadcast makes sense. So we're going to kick off now with questions for Rami. And the first question that we had from John in Wales was just if, to kick this off, Rami, if you could tell us in a couple of minutes what really happened in Syria since 2011. We know it's a huge question to ask in a couple of minutes, but if you could just kick off by just giving people a really quick explainer of how we got from the uprising to now.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for the Syria campaign for making this possible. I also want to say if there are any communication problems where we cut, we'll be back on the air. It's just that this was all sudden and we don't have electricity here. This is generated electricity. It's a good question to start with because what I'm realizing is that a lot of people that are now reporting on the conflict, and I mean abroad, are people that don't actually know what happened in the beginning, and that sort of loses the context of what actually did happen and why we are where we are today. There were, in 2011, during the Arab Spring, protests that broke out across Syria, in many cities across Syria. Syria had been witnessing dictatorship for the past 41 years in 2011, and these protests were attacked by the Syrian regime. There was a media blackout, which was preventing information from coming out of the country. Thousands of people were arrested. Thousands of people were killed during the peaceful protests that went on for around 7 months, which were almost totally peaceful, except for some, we can say there were some people that were not really part of the movement that were committing some crimes. And this was, a lot of people accused the regime for doing this and trying to turn it into a violent revolt because it was a very popular revolt. We had protests of up to 500,000 people protesting in squares in Hama, in Deir ez-Zor, 300,000 people. In Damascus, it wasn't possible. There was too much of a security grip on the civilians. The government pushed and pressured civilians into what turned into an armed conflict after 7 months. This was towards the end of basically 2011 and beginning of 2012. That armed conflict slowly developed into fundamentalists. There were some fundamentalist groups that started arriving and joining the scene. A lot of these, if we're talking about ISIS or Nusra, these groups that then started to generate, we're talking about now 2 years into the conflict. The Free Syrian Army was the first year of the sort of rebel resistance against the regime, and it was the idea of it was to protect civilians, and they were mainly defected soldiers from the regime. The fundamentalist groups were established by a number of people, and we're talking about large numbers of people that were actually released from Syrian prisons. And for people that don't know this, during the Iraqi war, Bashar al-Assad was actually responsible, and this was publicly admitted by the foreign minister of Syria, that jihadists were being sent from Syria to Iraq to fight against the American soldiers that were there. So there has been a long relationship in the past between the Syrian regime and between fundamentalist groups like Al-Qaeda and the civilians here, and those part of the uprising, the Syrian revolution, accused the Syrian regime, the Syrian regime of basically deploying these groups and allowing them out of prisons to join this movement, to radicalize the movement. And they were successful in doing that, although, and we're going to talk about this more, but although there are still the majority of those here, and we're talking about Aleppo and Idlib and Latakia and Hama, controlled by rebel forces, and these are still supportive of the aspirations of those that participated in the revolution, and that is democracy, freedom, and some sort of end to this dictatorship, whether that's through a political solution that's led by a political body outside the country, or whether it's through rebel resistance that will bring down the Assad regime. And obviously there's a lot tied to that now, because ISIS has come into the picture, which is a threat to not just the rest of the world, but mainly to the Syrians that you see here standing behind me, who are mainly affected by ISIS. One, because it's an excuse for the Syrian regime to continue attacking these areas when ISIS is not even here. And two, because ISIS is a direct threat that is trying to take over these areas because they want to expand the Islamic Caliphate.
Great, super, Rami. The next question's from Sarah, and she's asking, can you tell us a little bit more about the situation in Aleppo, particularly for civilians with the airstrikes?
If I speak before the Russian airstrikes, in general, Aleppo was witnessing barrel bombs on a daily basis, and I think barrel bombs has become a very famous term internationally. Although a barrel bomb is a locally produced weapon that is indiscriminate and very randomly thrown out of a helicopter. It's not capable of hitting a target because it's a moving helicopter where a bomb is just dropped, and the victims of these attacks have almost always been civilians. These barrel bombs, since the Russian intervention, have reduced, although today, this morning, there was 3 barrel bomb attacks, and this is the first time that there's been a barrel bomb attack since I have come to Aleppo 5 weeks ago. So that's something that's been introduced all over again. But the Russian airstrikes have substituted for these attacks in terms of impact, in terms of consistency. On a daily basis, we see about 10 to 15 airstrikes. Yesterday was actually a calm day where we only saw 4 airstrikes, but in substitute to that, we're seeing something called an elephant missile, which I hope will also become a famous international term. It's a locally produced missile. It's launched from the ground on one side of the front line to the other side. It's launched by the Syrian regime, and sometimes up to 100 elephant missiles are used. The impact of an elephant missile can bring down a building or 2 buildings. It's about 70 or 80% the impact of a barrel bomb, and it's used in much larger numbers, and sometimes 6 or 7 can be launched within a minute. And we've seen a lot of this recently in Aleppo. In Aleppo, the main problem right now are these Russian airstrikes. Just a few moments ago, before we went live, there was basically an airstrike. We heard a rocket go past. Everyone here ducked and ran off, but it landed. We're not sure where it landed yet. I'm sure someone's going to tell us soon exactly where it landed. But it was nearby. It was here in the old city. So this is a problem that we see all day, every day. There's almost always a plane in the air, and the attacks are random attacks that are targeting civilians. So the situation in Aleppo in that sense is very, very dire.
Great. We have a question from Amr, who wants to know, just following on from what you were saying, can you talk a little bit about the types of targets that these airstrikes are hitting and the impact that's having on the people that live in Aleppo?
These are random attacks, as I said, totally random attacks. The question, I think, to this would be, why would Russia want to attack civilians? I'm sure that everyone can understand that Assad has an opposition, and it's understanding that he would punish the civilians in order to not support that opposition, that rebel opposition, the political opposition. Whereas why would Russia do this? And that's a question that I asked myself before coming to Aleppo this time, because Russia had not intervened in the times that I was here before. However, it's very clear that the strategy that the Russian attacks are taking are the exact same strategy of the Syrian regime attacks. There hasn't been any change in targets whatsoever. I've been following these attacks. Each time an attack happens, we go to the aftermath. We see that there are no rebel groups present. I'm not just talking about al-Nusra or ISIS. ISIS are not located in all of Aleppo. Al-Nusra can be seen in some areas to the north, whereas not in central Aleppo. Here, there are only rebel groups, although even if that's the case, the rebel groups are not the target of these attacks. And I think it's obvious to the people here, but maybe not to those abroad, is that the attacks, the Syrian regime, if I were Assad and I wanted to actually win this, I would be attacking the civilians here, if I'm to speak pragmatically. Because the fighters that are here are from here. They're entwined in the society. If we ask any one of the people here behind us, do you have fighters in your family? Everyone will say, I have 1 or 2 fighters in our family. They live here. This is their city. This is their area. These are their alleyways. Their homes are around us. And it's because they're protecting these areas. And they won't, there's a total non-acceptance to the idea of Assad retaking these areas, because we're going to see the same situation that we've seen in regime-controlled areas, where any opposition to Assad have been arrested, They've been tortured to death. We've seen proof of this. 10,000 pictures, I think it's 11 or 11,500 pictures of 5,000 victims that were tortured to death in Syrian security branches. There is no such thing as opposition to Assad in Assad-controlled territory. And that's what these groups are trying to prevent happening here. And they've been labeled as being similar to ISIS, although they're fighting ISIS, although they've taken areas from ISIS recently. The targets are not these rebel groups again. The targets are just randomly attacking the city, preventing development. These are the reasons. Allowing ISIS to actually make some advances on coming towards Aleppo. And this totally contradicts the so-called fight against terrorism that Russia and Syria are leading, because first of all, their attacks are being concentrated where ISIS is at its very center, as are the coalition attacks. And you would say, well, you know what, they're hitting them where it hurts, in the middle of their system. However, this is pushing ISIS deeper into Syria towards Aleppo, towards Idlib, and towards Latakia, which is controlled by the rebels. The fronts between the rebels and between ISIS are becoming very tense. Now, at the moment, as we speak, there are a number of fights between both the rebels and ISIS happening in the northeastern areas where ISIS is trying to infiltrate and take these areas. A number of areas were taken by the rebel groups a few weeks ago, and since before those areas were taken, when they were controlled by ISIS, the regime was not attacking those areas, was not preventing them from taking Aleppo, whereas now those areas are being attacked because the rebels control them. So why would Assad and Russia want ISIS to take over Aleppo when that totally contradicts the idea of wanting to actually flush them out rather than allow them to take more territory? Simply because if they do take this territory, then it becomes the whole world's problem and no longer Syria's problem alone or Russia's problem alone. And these rebel groups are basically, we would say in Arabic, the fork in the throat that are preventing Assad from destroying his opposition. So ISIS is an excuse to do that. The attacks are random.
Great, really helpful. Thanks, Rami. Just for people who've recently joined, this is the live broadcast with Rami Jarrah out of Aleppo. Rami's taking questions. If you have any, just put them in the live chat next to the YouTube video. The next question following on from that, Carl, is, sorry, Rami, Carl is asking, should the Islamic State be bombed and can they be defeated this way?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Sorry, Carl has a question, which is, should IS be bombed and can they be defeated this way?
ISIS should be bombed. But just before I answer the question, just quickly, as I said, as you mentioned, Anna, we're broadcasting over radio inside Syria in Aleppo and Idlib, and the idea is that people know that you're genuinely, the people outside are genuinely asking questions and don't understand. I'm just going to say a few words quickly in Arabic because this is being broadcasted over the air. لمستمعينا على صوت دمشق بنعتذر كثير انه الحديث عم يصير اغلبه بالانجليزي، والهدف منه هو التواصل مع المجتمع الخارج سوريا من دول كثيره بالعالم. هلا عم يسالونا اسئله عن شو الواقع اللي عم يصير هون بسوريا. نحن عم نبث هلا من حلب القديمه، وهي الاسئله يعني نوعا ما انا عم رد عليها حسب انا اللي عم شوفه، وبنفس الوقت رح نسال من المواطنين اللي موجودين بالمنطقه اللي نحن هلا عم نبث فيها. الاسئله اللي بلشنا فيها كانت مركزه على كيف بدات المشاكل هون. يعني حكينا اول شيء انه بلشت من بدايه الاحداث كانت ثوره سلميه، وكيف تطورت لعمل عسكري بين الطرفين. ذكرنا هي القصه. هلا عم نسال سؤال، هي انه داعش لازم تنقصف ولا ما لازم تنقصف؟ نحن باراء الشعب. هلا رح نضطر ننتقل نحكي بالانجليزي ورح نحاول نلخص كل فتره. Alright, I'm sorry. So no one here disagrees with the idea of ISIS being bombed. I haven't met with one Syrian civilian in rebel-controlled territory that has a problem with ISIS being bombed. There is resentment, however, and the reasons for that is there's resentment for the way that it's being deployed. And the reasons for that are that ISIS are not the only problem in the eyes of those that are here, and that ISIS was facilitated and allowed to expand by the Assad regime because it would become this excuse in order to silence this peaceful uprising, or the rebel resistance that then joined later on, that was genuinely calling for democracy and freedom, and actually had a very good, strong stance publicly and internationally. There was a lot of support for the Syrian cause. That support has reduced a lot since ISIS came into the picture. So you can imagine that as someone, if any one of these people here sensed a lot, a few months back or a few years back, that the world was actually on their side, and then when ISIS came into the picture, people started hesitating and taking a few steps back and saying, well, you know what, maybe we're promoting terrorism. So these are the people that have the most resentment for ISIS. And these areas, as I said, are totally clear of ISIS. There's no such thing. So we all agree they should be being bombed, but there should be some sort of collaboration with a local partner. And obviously the people here think that that's them, who can help in providing the targets that are more accurate, rather than targeting civilians. Because even in Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, where ISIS is its stronghold, civilians are dying. Children, women and men are dying and paying the price for these attacks, because the intel is not strong enough. There isn't a collaboration with a group on the ground that can then go in and actually fill that vacuum. So if ISIS is continually attacked from the air, who controls these areas? What sort of governance is in these areas? There has to be some collaboration with groups on the ground. It's obvious that there's no boots on the ground right now from international forces, and I don't think there's an appetite for that. Then whose boots are on the ground? Is it Assad? If that's what the international community is working to build, Assad becoming that local partner to go in, then all this is going to cause is that these people also radicalize and not accept that, because they won't accept Assad being in power. This is the conflict of interest. And I'm going to ask just anyone, نسألك سؤال معلش؟ تفضل اقعد بس اقعد جنبي. I'm just going to ask a question, I'll translate it. هلا سألوني عن داعش، انه لازم تنقصف داعش ولا انه انتم ضد قصفها. بشكل عام انا بدي اسألك انت شو موقفك من داعش؟ انت بتشوف يعني بشكل عام انت شو موقفك؟ بتحبهم مثلا؟
لا اكيد لا، باعتبار يعني انه في عندهم شيء من الرعب، يعني اننا بشكله رعب كبير، يعني كبير، يعني فئه كبيره من المجتمع من ناحيتنا هون، من متواجدين بالمناطق المحرره، فاكيد لا.
So I asked him how he felt about ISIS, and he said that we don't like ISIS because they terrorize the people here. In the past they terrorized the people here, and we could not accept that. طب داعش متواجده بحلب؟ انت شوف يعني هلا هون في داعش مثلا حوالينا بالمناطق اللي ابعد منا، وين داعش متواجده؟
هلا هي بالنسبه لحلب المدينه لا، ما في اي تواجد لداعش. اقرب شيء تواجد لها يعني هو بالريف الشمالي، الريف الشمالي تبع حلب.
I asked him if ISIS were located here, or he knows of any members of ISIS that are here, and said no, there's no such thing in central Aleppo, and that they're further located towards the northern areas that are close. These are areas that are closer to Raqqa. داعش كانت موجودة بهاي المناطق من زمان، وحاولت أنه تفرض السيطرة بهاي المناطق، يعني حاولت تعمل هذا الشيء. شو الناس هون، الناس بشكل عام، حاول ما تحكي عن نفسك، هذا النظام اللي حاولوا يفرضوه بدهم اياه؟ واذا لا ليش لا؟
هلا هن صار يعني انه صار حتى لما كانوا بدهم يفرضوا السيطره كان هو اسلوبهم يعني اسلوب يعني مثل خوف، يعني صار في زرع خوف بقلوب الناس، لذلك يعني الناس ما تقبلتهم ولا باي شكل.
يعني انت ما ممكن تقبل؟
لا اكيد لا، طبعا لا.
So I asked that, ISIS were here a long time ago, and they tried to impose their authority here. Is that sort of authority, would that be accepted? And I asked him not to answer for himself, but to answer for everyone else, what he feels everyone would say. And he said no one would accept ISIS coming back. When they were here and they tried to impose that authority, they were doing it with threats and terrorizing people. So that would not be accepted. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Rami. We've got tons of questions coming in thick and fast. There's a whole bunch of questions around who is governing the liberated parts of Aleppo, and how are services being provided for civilians in those areas, and who is doing the humanitarian work.
Okay. So it's a messy situation in Aleppo, because it's not one government. There's no one government that's in power. The political opposition that is located outside the country, because of the dangers of being here, have not been able to totally, say, cover the country with the rebel-controlled areas with an authority, because there are a number of groups in these areas. And we're not talking about ISIS now, we're not talking about Nusra, we're talking only about the rebel groups. The rebel groups are divided into a number of groups. They're all sort of collaborate in one way or another under this umbrella, which we call the Free Syrian Army. However, the governance has been led over the past few years by what we call small local councils. These local councils are spread out. So in every single area, so this area would have a local council, and it's a center that provides, that does a survey on what people are in the area, because obviously the government doesn't provide these services anymore. So for example, if someone dies or someone gives birth to a child, where would this be registered? Who's doing this work? It's this local council. If there's an area where the water supply is cut off, who would come and try to fix that? It's this local council. There's a police force. There's the civil defense, for example. This is an institution. There's at the moment, there's something called the air. It's called the, I think, Air Offensive Documentation Center, which is another group that's now going to follow on the airstrikes. These centers are basically led by volunteers. There's aid coming into the country. A number of countries are providing this aid. The European Union, the US, Saudi Arabia is providing support, Qatar is providing support, Turkey is providing support. There are a number of parties that are providing support that's being tunneled through international implementers, NGOs that are located outside the country and are collaborating with groups on the ground, civil society groups that are then establishing these centers. Now, the only problem is that this is a war zone at the moment. And what I find easier, and this is my opinion, is if you're in a dictatorship in war, it's much easier to control society and make sure that everything's going as planned. Whereas in this society, what we see here is democracy is already being practiced. So I'll give an example. Here, you will have people differing on something where someone will say, no, this group is bad, or no, we don't like the head of the Syrian opposition, or we're not happy with the negotiation talks, and someone else saying, no, we are happy with the talks. Whereas in Assad-controlled Syria, whatever Assad says goes. The media is going to say the same thing. Here we have different media entities that are working in Syria, collaborating, but at the same time differing. The different audiences have different opinions, and that sort of slows down the authority and control during a war. And that's sort of the negative side for people that are leading a war and want to win. But the positive side of that is that people are able to express their concerns. So here, people are always talking about problems. For example, the electricity problems, the fact that the traders are raising the prices when the actual prices of diesel are not going up. The country is moving properly. However, there is just a general effort by the people that are left here, and we're talking about 500,000 to 800,000 people that don't want to leave the country or are not able to leave the country because of poverty or because their shops are here, because they don't feel that they'll find anything elsewhere. And some people have told me that they don't want to go through the disgrace of possibly getting on a boat and dying on a boat, or going to Europe and feeling like the feeling that a refugee would have in general. The people left here have been filtered down to people that don't want that. There's an effort from those people, a voluntary effort to implement authority in these areas. The good difference that I've seen from a year until now is a year ago, the militarized groups, the rebel groups, had more authority. Now I've seen much less of that. And the civil society groups that are collaborating with international implementers and are being trained to implement projects, water projects or well projects or medical aid projects, these groups are much stronger now and have a stronger voice. And I think that citizen journalism and some of the emerging media groups that emerged during the uprising that work in these areas, like the radio that we're broadcasting on now, I think it's thanks to a lot of projects like that where the civilians here do now have a voice. In Assad-controlled Syria, that's impossible.
Great, Rami. It's really inspiring to hear about the work people are doing in Aleppo. For people who've just joined, this is the broadcast with Rami from Aleppo. If you have any questions, please add them into the YouTube chat. We're going to take as many as we can and try and get through them all. And we're just going to break for a second now because Rami is also broadcasting this on local radio across Aleppo and Idlib, because a lot of people there feel like, you know, people in the West and around the world know what's happening in Syria and don't care. So this is being broadcast to show that people actually do have questions about what happened in Syria and do care. So we're just going to let Rami do a quick update for his listeners.
ثانك يو لمستمعينا على صوت دمشق. بنرجع نذكر كانت هلا موجهه اسئله لكيف عم يتم الحكم الذاتي هون هلا بحلب، كيف الناس عم تمشي امورها، في شرطه مثلا، في مجالس محليه. فحكينا شوي عن هي المسائل، الاشياء اللي نحن شاهدناها بهالاخر سنه سنتين لطريقه اداره المناطق اللي موجوده بالمناطق المحرره. شرحنا عن هي القصه. كمان حكينا عن تواجد داعش، انه داعش فعلا موجوده بهي المناطق، الناس اللي موجوده هون هي مع داعش ولا ضده. معنا كان جبنا الاخ سالناه هذا السؤال وجاوب، يمكن سمعتوه لما كان عم يحكي بالعربي، فما في داعي ترجم الكلام اللي صار. ورح نكمل. اوكي.
Great. And Rami, as you know, a lot of people that are involved with the Syria campaign and around the world are hugely interested and supportive of the work of the Syrian civil defense, the White Helmets, the volunteer rescue workers. And we wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about what difference their work is making in Aleppo and what you've seen them do.
Okay. I'm going to ask a number of people here what they think, so we get some participation. رح أسألك ورح أسأل أكثر من شخص. الدفاع المدني برأيك عمله مهم مو مهم، وشو مؤثر على الوضع اللي عم بيصير بشكل عام؟ يعني الدفاع المدني وجوده اللي انت يعني شغلهم شو هو، ومفيد ولا مو مفيد، كيف مؤثر عليه؟
هلا من ناحيه تواجدهم هون طبعا مفيد، ويعني بكل ضربه بيتواجدوا، ويعني بعتقد انه ما بيمشي الحال بلا هون، لانه هن يعني شباب يعني بيتواجدوا مباشرا بعد الضربه وبيحاولوا ينقذوا كثير ناس، وحتى يعني احيانا عم بيطولوا اكثر من ليله مثلا بشغلهم لحتى انه يرفعوا الانقاض ويسحبوا ناس ويساعدوهم. فما بعتقد يكون يعني عدم وجودهم منيح.
So basically he was saying, I asked him the same question, but he was saying that they're effective. They're usually at the scene of an attack very soon after attack. Sometimes they're working a number of days in taking people out of the rubble from one attack. كم موجودين بكثافة هون يعني، وقدراتهم بتشوفها كافية انه يتعاملوا مع كل الاحداث؟
لا هلا في عندهم هن يعني نحن شفنا لما بيصير كذا ضربه في كذا منطقه، فكتير من الاوقات عم ينقصوا معدات او كذا. هلا هن كعدد يعني ما بقدر انه بحصي لك العدد تماما انه قال لك اياه، بس ولكن عم بيتواجدوا بكذا مكان. وهن هون بالنسبه لحلب المدينه يعني هي بقدر يعني اللي شايفه انا انه هن مقسمين لقطاعات، يعني كل مين له قطاعات مثلا بيشتغل عليها. فلما بيكون اكثر من ضربه بيتواجدوا باكثر من مكان، بس ولكن من ناحيه معداتهم انا اللي بعرفه عنهم يعني انه بيتنقلوا من مكان لمكان، فهن دائما يعني عندهم نقص بهالامر هذا.
So he was adding that there seems to be a problem in terms of equipment or the ability to deal with all the incidences, because that was my question. But they do have a number of branches that respond to different attacks in different areas, and they're usually on time in that sense. في حدا بده يحكي شيء عن عمل الدفاع المدني؟ تفضل. مين اللي انت بدك انت قلت؟ ايه تفضل.
بالنسبه للدفاع المدني اكيد في كثير مشاكل بتواجههم هون بالمنطقه. اول شيء المعدات، الاليات، المحروقات اللي بتشغل الاليات هي مشكله كثير كبيره عم يواجهوها. هن عم يكونوا متواجدين بكذا مكان. طبعا اذا كان في ضربات متعدده بلحظه الحدث اكيد عم يتواجدوا، والله يعطيهم العافيه، واكيد ما يصير بلا عملهم هون بالداخل.
So you're saying that again that there is a problem with the equipment, but there's also a problem with the fuel, where lack of fuel, and that a lot of their work depends on fuel. Obviously, the trucks, and obviously when they want to bring out the rubble, they use these large large equipment in order to bring out that from the rubble. And he also agrees that they could not do without the civil defense, and that they're doing a good job. في حدا تاني عنده تعليق على القصة؟ ممكن حدا عنده شكوى ضدهم، ما بعرف يعني. I was saying maybe someone has a complaint شكوى على شكر. So there's someone else saying here that he just wants to thank them, to thank the civil defense.
Great.
شكر الله كتر خيرا يا رب ويجازيهم الخير، بلاهم يعني ما في حياة لمدينتنا، الله هيك يجازيكم الخير ويجازيهم الخير يا رب.
He said, without them, there's no life in our city.
Great. That and
So
for,
he wants to thank them.
Super, that's great to hear. And for people that are interested in learning more about the civil defence, if you go to whitehelmets.org, you can see some of their work. They've saved 40,000 lives from under the rubble of bombs in Syria, and the whole world deserves their support. And you can also donate there to help them get more money to do their life-saving work. Great, Rami, we're going to keep going through them because they're coming thick and fast.
Okay.
Madeline is asking, what is an average day like for a person in Aleppo? And what do people do for fun?
All right. I'm going to ask this question to the person next to me. السؤال هو شو اليوم العادي بالنسبة لك بحلب، يوم طبيعي تشرح لنا عنها، وشو بتحب تعمل لتسلي حالك؟
اليوم العادي انه عندي بيكون في قصف كتير، هذا شيء تعودنا عليه، صار يوم عادي يعني بيكون في قصف كتير وللاسف في مجازر.
ضل ترجم كل كلمتين مشان ما يضيع شيء. A normal day is we see massacres and a lot of airstrikes. This is a normal day in Aleppo.
عندي بيكون في قصف كتير، هذا تعودنا عليه. اما الشيء الغير طبيعي بايامنا هاي صار انه عم بيكون ما في قصف، ما في صوت رصاص، ما في صوت نار، ما في صوت طيران بالجو. هذا صار شيء غير طبيعي بالنسبه للشعب السوري وبالنسبه لهم بمدينه حلب.
What has become not normal where we are is that if you don't hear any attacks, if you don't hear bullets being fired, if you don't see any sort of signs of war, this is something that we're not used to. We've become used to the war. شو بتعمل انت بشكل عام بنهارك؟ يعني شو بتعمل، او انت شو بتعمل تسلي حالك؟ مثلا لما بدك هيك تريح امورك، مثلا شو بتعمل؟
المشكله انه هون ما يعني ضمن المناطق المحرره اللي نحن فيها بالمدينه ما فيك تعمل شيء، يعني حتى نسبه بطاله كبيره عند الشباب، ما في شغل، ما فيك تعمل شيء. انا اكثر شيء اذا بدي اشتغل، اذا بدي اسلي نفسي فبنزل على الشارع، بتمشى شوي، بشوف اصدقائي، بشرب قهوه.
ما بتلعب شده؟
لا لا لا،
ما في هيك قصص؟
ما في هيك شيء.
يعني؟
لا مو ممنوع، بس انا ما بلعب شده.
So he's saying that personally, there isn't really much to do. So what he would do is he would go out and walk around, try to meet some friends, talk on possibly what's going on. I asked him if he play cards. He said he personally doesn't like playing cards. So في حدا تاني بيحب يقول لنا شو بيعمل ليسلي حاله بشكل عام يعني؟ ما بدك تحكي؟ مين في حدا بده يحكي؟ شو بتعمل؟ مثلا بتجيب بزر وبطيخ بتاكل، شو بتعمل؟
عايشين الحمد لله، عايشين كأيامنا عادية يعني.
Right, they're saying we're living. That's enough.
Okay, and a follow-on question, Rami, from John in New York is, what's life like for children inside Aleppo, and are they still going to schools?
تعالوا انتوا الثلاثة، تعالوا انتوا الثلاثة. Here's some children. يلا. Sit down. اقعدوا هون. اقعدوا. يلا. انت تعال اقعد هون. انت بتروح المدرسة؟
لا.
ليش ما بتروح المدرسة؟
ما بسجل.
He's not in school. He doesn't go to school. انت بتروح المدرسة؟
لا، أنا شغل بس.
تشتغل. This child is working. انت بتروح المدرسة؟
لا، أنا بشتغل.
This child is also working. ليش ما بتروحوا على المدرسة؟ شو السبب؟
أنا لأني ما بشتغل الماكينة، ما بحسن أبطل.
He can't stop because he has to work. He works on a machine. شو هي الماكينة بتشتغل عليها؟ ما فهمت. Okay, so he sews and he can't go to school. هذا الطفل ليش ما بيروح المدرسة؟ أنت ليش ما بتروح؟
أنا مسجل بالجامع.
كيف مسجل بالجامع؟ شو يعني؟
عم بقرا بالجزء سيدي.
So this child, he's learning Quran. He's not going to school. ليش؟ مين اللي سجلك بالجامع؟
أبوي.
ليش ما في مدارس؟
في.
وينها؟ ليش ما نسجل فيها؟
أبوي ما بسجلني.
So his father isn't putting him in school. He's learning Quran, and there is a school he's saying nearby that he's not going to. So there's also an awareness problem, which is common. أنت بدك تحكي كمان؟
بنروح على المدرسة، هي بتجي الطيارة الميق لسمم لحن سمم نبرخ، بتجي الطيارة الميق على الساعة 9 سمم نبرخ من المدرسة، ما نكتب بقولوا نروح نصرفوش إيش المدرسة.
He used to go to school, but it was very common that in the morning at around 9 a.m. قلت لي الساعة 9
لما نجينا ندرس
there would be attacks, and the attacks would begin, and they would tell them to go home. So there isn't really much of an appetite for them going to school.
طيار المياه الله ما يوفق.
حدا عم يلقموا كلام؟ ما في داعي يعني. اوكي.
الله ما يوفق الطيارة، كل ما نجي عن ما ندرس بيجي.
Every time we want to work to go to school, we're attacked. So they're not going to the schools. طب المدرسة اللي موجودة هون وينها؟
بقى 20.
وين؟ هو مدرسة يعني كبيرة ولا بقلب شقة ولا كيف؟
حوش عرب.
بقلب بيت. The school that is here is a small house. It's not an actual school. ليش المدارس؟ طب في حدا تاني يحكي بالقصة؟ يعني مالي؟ مين بدك تحكي حضرتك؟ تفضل. اوكي يلا شباب. ها. So I'm asking why don't they go to compounds? Why aren't they in schools? ليش ما عم يروحوا على المدارس مثلا؟
المدارس مستهدفات والجوامع مستهدفات بشكل عام، هذا كله فوين يدرسوا؟ ما في غير في بيت بينزل يعني صغير او هذا، وعند بيطلع الطيران بيحاولوا يصرفوا ويرجعوا على اهاليهم.
In general, the mosques and the schools are being attacked. So the religious institutions and the schools are a target. He says. أنت برأيك يعني متعمد إنه ينضرب المدرسة نفسه؟
متعمد نعم.
طب فيك منطقيا تقول لي ليش؟
ليش؟ لأنه هن بدهم تنبت الشعب هذا كله بدهم يبيدوا، هيك الرأي العام والرأي الخاص ولا هذا كله. هن حجتهم هالشعب هذا، الشعب المسلم بدهم يبيدوا بشكل عام، بدهم يدمروا هالبلد أكثر من هيك لحتى ما حد يضل فيها.
So I asked him, do you think realistically that the schools are an actual target? And he said, yes. I said, why? He said, because they want to destroy the people in these areas. He genuinely believes that the people are a target in these areas. كل واحد هون رأيه إنه متعمد الضرب على المدارس؟ في حدا رأيه لا؟ Someone else wants to say something.
اكيد القصف متعمد على المدارس هن، لانه في مخطط ايراني لضرب الجيل السوري، الجيل السني، هن بيتقصدوا السني طبعا، السنه بين قوسين، لضرب الجيل السني حتى ما يطلع جيل في الايام يحاربون. هذا مخطط ايراني اكيد نحن متاكدين منه، وفي تعمد بضرب المدارس. يعني في بعض الاحيان خارج حلب القديمه اضطروا انه يعملوا مدارس تحت الارض باقبيه، ضمن الأقبية، حتى يعني استهدفت الأبنية نفسها اللي فيها المدارس اللي فيها الأقبية. الحمد لله إنه يعني صارت أفضل شوي كتدريس.
The other man said that he thinks there's a sectarian element to it, where Iran, which is involved in helping the Syrian regime, is actually trying to target the Sunni population and specifically the young generation in order to prevent any development for the future. And that there are schools that have been built under the ground like shelters, which has made it a bit easier for children to go to school.
Okay, great, really helpful. Thanks, Rami. The next question is that from Amr, that there's a lot of dispute from Russia around, denying that they are, attacking civilians inside Syria. And one of the questions specifically is, how do people on the ground in Aleppo know the difference between a regime airstrike and a Russian airstrike?
I could say I've been to Aleppo quite a lot. And this is the first time that I've come to Aleppo 5 weeks ago after the Russians intervened. We know the planes that the Syrian government have, the MEGs. We know the helicopters that they have. We know what missiles they use. Once the missiles have landed, we have the scraps of those missiles. We see what those missiles are. The Russian jet fighters have been filmed. The Russians are not denying that they're attacking these areas. The Russians haven't once denied that they've attacked Aleppo or Idlib or Latakia or Hama or Homs or Damascus. They have not denied that. The game that they're playing is that they're saying that these areas have fundamentalist groups in them and that ISIS is located in the areas. And they're justifying the fact that they're attacking here. So if we can prove that ISIS are not in fact in these areas, and it's important for me to mention, when we say Daesh, Daesh is a word that ISIS refused to be named. It's unacceptable. It's a word that was created by a Syrian activist, and it's one letter of each beginning of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And if you say that word to someone, if ISIS asks, who am I? And you say, well, you're Daesh, they'll kill you. There's no such thing. They want to be called the Islamic State. And here, a lot of people who support them, and I'm talking about those in their areas, call them the state. So if you don't call them the state, it means you're against them. And they know that. And there's no tolerance for that. So ISIS in these areas are obviously not located, but the attacks have been sorry, someone's talking to me. شو بدك تقول شيء بخصوص داعش؟ عندك شيء بدك تقوله؟ ليش خايف؟ انت نفسك اللي بدك Some people, can I just mention something? Some people here are worried about talking about ISIS. And this is something that is not hard to convey. And the reason is because of what I was explaining earlier. The people here are worried that ISIS is going to take these areas again. And especially because the coalition attacks abroad from the international community that are attacking in ISIS territory are pushing them further here. And this is exactly what the international community has said, that they want to push them out of Iraq and further into Syria. And the fact that they're being attacked by Assad. So there is a constant worry in talking about ISIS. And this is the only reason you'll find that people will not talk about ISIS, because they know that ISIS will kill them if they ever came back to these areas and they knew that they had been talking. But the Russian airstrikes, if we go back to that, the Russian airstrikes, the plane, we know it's a white plane. It's much faster. It flies at a higher altitude, so you see just a sort of cross, the sound of it, the impact of the missile, the scraps of the missile. And Russia admitting that it's hit these areas and actually publishing the images and saying that, you know, this image is a basically depot for ISIS. And then the people here saying, well, you know what? No, this was actually a petrol station in between 4 residential buildings that killed 15 people. And then when, you know, you film that and we publish that, and that goes, even if it goes viral, the Syrian government says, well, you know what? These are fabricated images. This is unverified information. This isn't true. So basically, these people have been accused of fabricating all these videos and creating this joke, and that it's not true. So that's what makes it obvious. If I'm to ask people in general هون, بدي منطقيا تقول لي كيف تعرفوا انه هذا ضرب روسي؟ يعني ليش مو مثلا طياره سوريه؟ شو عرفك انه هي طياره روسيه؟
طيران روسي على حجم الصواريخ تبعيته وحجم الصوت تبعه دماره اوسع.
The size, I asked him the same question. He said the size of the sound of the missile and the size of the impact is totally different. وهذا الشيء تغير من وقت صار تدخل روسيا؟
يتغير لكم. تغير بالدمار اكثر. طب
الطياره السوريه عم تضرب؟
تطلع ببعض الاحيان طياره سوريه، بس على الاغلب الروسي.
طب كيف تعرف انه طياره سوريه؟
الطياره السوريه معروفه. عم هلا كان يطلع طياره واحده اول سوريه، هلا صار يطلع في شكل اسراب 3 4.
الطياره السوريه كنت تشوف يعني تشوفها؟
بنشوفها لكن.
شو لونها مثلا؟
لونها سماوي او موهه.
The Syrian planes are either blue or it's the sort of army. It has an army tag to it, or it's green. However, the Syrian planes are still going out, but he's saying that the Russian attacks are more consistent. So they know the difference between the Russian planes and the Syrian planes. Another thing that I want to mention is that the Russian attacks are diagonal attacks, horizontal or diagonal. So it shoots from a different area. Whereas the Syrian planes shoot from directly up, they dive down and they shoot directly down. And this is why I was asking that they actually spot the Syrian planes. Whereas the Russian planes are very high up, higher in technology, able to actually do that. The Syrians were not capable of doing that.
Great, really helpful, Rami, and really great to hear those perspectives on the ground, especially in light of the kind of Russian propaganda that you alluded to. We just have 10 minutes left, so I just wanted, for people that have just joined, this is a live broadcast with Rami Jarrah, a Syrian journalist in Aleppo. Rami, do you want to just do a little brief update in Arabic? We know you're broadcasting this simultaneously in Aleppo and Idlib.
ايه لمستمعينا على صوت دمشق، اسفين كثير مره ثانيه للي ما عم يعرف شو عم ينحكى بالانجليزي، بس الاسئله كانت عم تتوجه تقريبا هون للمواطنين بشكل عام. كان عندنا اسئله على كيف بتعرفوا انه هي طياره روسيه اللي عم تضرب. سمعتوا انتم يمكن الاجوبه تبع هي الاسئله. بنفس الوقت الانتشار يعني داعش، ردينا حكينا كمان عن موضوع داعش وانه النظام عم يستغل هذا الامر للتقدم ونشر الافكار اللي هن عم يشتغلوا فيها. رح نكمل مع البرنامج. شكرا. All right.
Great, thanks, Rami. So second from last question, which has been asked by a whole bunch of people, including Tim, Shiam, Salim, Keenan. They're all asking, what do Syrian civilians want the international community to do to protect them?
I think that if you were to ask any Syrian, what do you want right now? They want Assad out of power. And the response to that from the international community, for anyone in the international community, would be like, okay, well, if Assad's out of power, then does that mean ISIS are in power? And how dangerous is that? The Syrians here, you have to look at it from their point of view. If they're being, this is the option that everyone's imposing on them, that you either decide, you know, you want Assad or you want ISIS. You choose. And they're saying, you know, no, we have a third option. We have these groups that are actually, you know, they're our children fighting. They're our children. They're protecting us. They're in our areas. But then again, no, the media and the international community saying, no, you have ISIS, you have Assad. I'm not going to say that these people are going to choose ISIS, but I think it would be very intelligent and clever to stop giving them those two options. Because Assad is a problem that has been around for 42, 43 years. The people here know that ISIS is not a long-lasting project. They know that the international community would never accept ISIS controlling an international airport or controlling a whole army force and having all its borders totally independent and under its control. They know that. And I think the whole world knows that. It's not going to be accepted. But the fact that Assad being allowed to is accepted to control his borders is something that the people here refuse. So what do they want? No collaboration between the international community and Assad on fighting off ISIS. Why? A simple reason, because Assad cannot play the role of a local partner with boots on the ground. That is impossible. He can only play the same role that the international community and the coalition is playing, which is attacks from the air. And if Britain and the UK and France and Germany and soon Germany and the US have a lack of technology and actually require, you know, Syrian technology in order to take out ISIS from the air, then I would understand, but I don't think that's the case. They can't play the role of a local partner on the ground. The rebel groups here can play that role. So there is a general urge from the society, and I answered this question because I've spoken to a lot of people over the past few days about this. People don't want the international community to collaborate with Assad, because Assad is only using this to destroy his opposition in the process of destroying ISIS. The Syrian regime has no intention of bringing down ISIS unless the opposition is brought down in the process. And it won't be a target until that is the case. So why is this, or there all this controversy over why is the Syrian regime, why are the Russia and the Syrian regime attacking areas that ISIS are not in it? That's the reason, and that's why the attacks are concentrated here. So the main request in that sense is to stop Assad and Russia attacking these areas with the excuse of attacking ISIS. The people here are worried that ISIS is going to take back these areas. They're worried, they're genuinely worried. And the only reason that that's becoming possible is because of the Russian and Syrian airstrikes. So stopping those airstrikes, demanding that those airstrikes are stopped. I feel stupid even saying this, but this is what everyone's going to say. But I feel stupid saying it. They feel stupid saying it. Lines are over the areas where the ISIS are not located. I mean, it's simple. If ISIS isn't here, why are you bombing these areas? So a no-fly zone is a request, although I don't see it happening. In addition to the fact that there shouldn't be any collaboration with those that are actually helping ISIS expand, because it serves them to destroy their opposition.
Great, really helpful, Rami. And then just a final question, which has come in from, you know, so many people, which is, what can people around the world do to support ordinary Syrians? People watching this broadcast.
I think that spread of word is very important. I think that it plays a major role. I think that if we look at the last year in the conflict, there's been a lot of dehumanization. So when you hear that 100 Syrians have been killed, it's not the same as hearing that 20 French people have been killed. And it's not the same as hearing that, you know, an American has been killed. And I understand that. I mean, it's happening every day, so people get used to it. You know, there's no solution. You don't have that magic button to press to fix the problem. However, there has been a lot of dehumanization, and I think that the main reason for that is this disconnection, where the info that is coming out the relay of the information. There's generally less appetite and less enthusiasm to explain what's going on in Syria because it's become a very complicated situation. So I think if someone genuinely wants to help, to give some time to actually understand the conflict, you have to try and find, you have to try and do your research to understand how this conflict started, and then you know what the people involved want for this conflict to stop. So if there's this total reluctance by people in these areas to give up to Assad, and they're also fighting ISIS, then I think it's important that everyone knows why. So if people can do their research on that and actually spread that word that, this is the problem. If people don't get this, then it's not going to change. And don't take my word for it or the people's here. Don't take our word for it. See for yourself, and then you know what the demands are, and you know what will calm this. You know what will actually allow a negotiation process where the Syrian regime and the Syrian opposition sit on one table and collaborate on this. I think spread of word of what and context of what is actually going on in Syria and trying to battle the misinformation, I think that's very important. I saw a video yesterday, and I mentioned this. I saw a video that said that there are 5 quick suggestions on how to stop the Syrian crisis and the refugee influx. And then this guy's saying, cut off the ISIS supply routes from Jordan and Turkey. Don't provide any aid or support to normal civilians. It's stuff like that. It's ridiculous. First of all, the information is wrong. There's no such thing as routes from Jordan to ISIS. Second of all, what are you talking about stopping the aid? You mean that if you stop the aid, then these people are going to fall apart and they'll stop resisting? Does that sound realistic? Is that humane? So I think that a lot of people that are telling the story right now are people that don't really understand the situation or are heartless in some way or another. So spread of word, I think, is the most thing that can help at this stage. I don't think that anyone has a magic button of actually doing something. Getting involved with aid groups that are actually providing help to the people here. I think that aid is actually coming into the country. I think that those things are all happening. I think it's been so prolonged now because of all those things and all these institutions that have been built that now what is needed is a solution. And no real solution can come without actual context and understanding of what's going on and what each party involved wants. And that's what I think there's an absence of.
Well, listen, Rami, thank you so much for playing your part today and really helping us and people on this call better understand what's happening in Syria. Just to add, from the Syria campaign side, if you want to take action in solidarity with some of these groups that are in Aleppo and across Syria, if you go to the whitehelmets.org, that's the support site for the volunteer rescue workers that we discussed earlier on the call. And you can take advocacy actions there to support their call for a no-fly zone, and you can also donate to support their work saving lives. If you go to medicsunderfire.org, that's a website that's asking medical workers and professionals from around the world to act in solidarity with the medics inside Syria who are under intense and have been under intense attack for the last 4.5 years. And then the final place we would recommend you checking out is Planet Syria, which is a network of 18,000 Syrian non-violent activists. They're human rights activists. They are Syria's peace movement, and they're asking for our solidarity to help end the aerial attacks that we heard so much about today and push for real internationally backed peace talks to accelerate an end to this conflict. Rami, I don't know if you want to do a final wrap-up broadcast to your listeners in Syria before we jump off the line.
Right, اوكي. لمستمعين صوت دمشق بنعتذر منكم مرة ثانية انه اغلبية الحديث بالانجليزي. يمكن اخر اسئلة اللي توجهت لنا كانت شو الناس اللي عم تطلبها بسوريا؟ وبشكل عام يعني حسب نحن اللي شايفينه انه في كثير معلومات خاطئة موجودة عند المجتمع الغربي عن اللي عم بيصير بسوريا، فإن للي مهتم انه يراجع التاريخ اللي صار بهالاخر 4-5 سنين ليعرف شو مطالب الناس اللي موجودة، وتوفير هي المطالب ممكن يؤدي إلى وقوف الحرب. إذا كل الجهات ممكن تصل إلى حقها فممكن يكون في حل. فهذا كان التركيز اللي كنا فيه. That's it. And I just want to quickly add just something.
Of course.
So أنا بعرف إنك إعلامي صح؟ So the person sitting next to me is a citizen journalist, and I want to demonstrate something. ليش انت مثلا كاعلامي احيانا بدك تصور بمشفى، احيانا بدك تصور بمكان، بتواجه مشاكل احيانا انه المواطنين او المشفى ما بدهم يتصوروا؟ شو السبب اللي فيه هذا الشيء؟ ممكن تشرحها بس بتفاصيل. So I'm asking him, as a citizen journalist, you go into hospitals, you want to film, you want to convey what's going on because you want to show the world. Why do you face any problems doing so? He said yes, and I said, can you explain why?
المشاكل اللي بنواجهها بعض الأحيان إنه الناس بترفض تطلع على الإعلام خوفة من القبضة الأمنية تبع النظام، لأنه بيكون لهم قرايبين بمناطق تواجد النظام، أو حتى خوف من داعش نفسها، لأنه كمان بيكون لهم قرايب بمناطق سيطرة داعش. فإنه مجرد خروجه على الإعلام الحر أو الإعلام القنوات المعارضة، فهذا بيعد جريمة عند داعش وعند النظام. فممكن إنه يتعرض للمساءلة، قرايبينه هنيك يتعرضوا للمساءلة أو حتى يتعرضوا للاعتقال أو للتصفية كمان بعض الأحيان.
So his response is mainly the people that he asked to speak on the camera or that he wants to interview, either they would probably have family that are in regime controlled territory or family that are in ISIS controlled territory, and they're both in a situation of sort of dictatorship and oppression, and they worry that their family would be harmed by either side. And I think this demonstrates, and I was demonstrating something else, but this demonstrates, because he mentioned ISIS as well, but this demonstrates that the people here are terrorized by both ISIS and the Syrian regime. And it's important for people to understand that. I tried to film in a hospital the other day, and they said to me, you can't film here. I said, why? They said, because they'll attack us. And I said, why? He said, because they know our location. And I said, well, they already know your location. Anyone can just walk into here and know that this hospital is here and provide that information over it. You could do it through Google coordinates. And he said, yes, but in his experience, every time they have filmed in a hospital or in a local council or in any civil institution, they have been punished for doing so, because the Syrian regime, he said to me, doesn't want us, Assad, he said, doesn't want us to show the world that we have a civil society. We will be punished for showing that reality. So I just wanted to demonstrate that's one reason why it's not easy to get information out of Syria and show the world what's going on. There are two terrorisms that are terrorizing the people here when they do that, both ISIS and the Syrian regime.
Yeah, well,
and thank you. I want to thank the Syria campaign. Thank you very much for making this possible.
No problem.
Thank you, Anna.
Rami, it was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for all your organization and for everyone else around you who took part. We know the risks you go to do this work, and it's deeply, deeply, deeply appreciated. And we look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone that participated.
Thanks. Okay, guys, that's it for now. Thank you so much for everyone who joined and asked questions and everything else. And of course, the biggest thank you to Rami and the team at Anna Press for making this happen. And we hope to do more of these very soon. Take care.